Has anyone ever told you that you're too emotional? Or have you ever told that to somebody else? Regardless of if you have been accused of being too emotional or you've told that to someone else, we are all emotional beings. So, it's really important that we are mindful of how we experience and express those emotions in our interpersonal relationships. In this video, we're going to look at the nature of emotions, the forces shaping emotion, and then in part 2, we'll look at some ways to manage our emotions and some emotional challenges that we experience. So, let's get started. The very first thing you need to know about the nature of emotions is, how do we define it? What is an emotion? Well, emotions are reactive. There's an event that happens, some type of stimuli that enters our world, and we react to it. Maybe we feel joy, maybe we feel anger, or maybe we feel fear. Again, we react to that event with some inner feeling. Keep in mind that all emotions have some form of physiological arousal. I know when I feel joyful, I usually feel very open and I feel very light. My face usually feels very stretched out. I smile a lot more. But when I feel anger, my face tends to scrunch up. I feel very tight. I even tend to get really hot. Now with joy, I feel a little warm inside, the warm fuzzies, but with anger, I feel hot. Again, this is a physiological reaction to my emotion. Now we can definitely identify and label our emotions. Some people are better than others, but with some self-reflexivity, we can definitely identify how we're feeling and then label that said emotion. We can also manage how we necessarily react. So you may realize, I am feeling angry at this moment, but it's not the best time for me to display the anger in the way I want to, so you may hold back. Maybe you don't necessarily hold back, and then that reaction is not managed in the way you would like. It's why some people don't react the way you expect them to. Like, oh, I just told you something horrible. Why didn't you react the way I wanted you to, or thought you should? Maybe it's because they have a different way of managing that particular emotion. And because we're human beings who feel emotions, our emotions are communicated, either directly or even indirectly, where if someone says, I'm fine, and you realize that they're not fine, that maybe they're actually going through something a little bit more than what they're letting on. Now, if they do it in a more direct way, this is what we like to call emotion sharing. Again, some people enjoy emotion sharing, telling people how they feel. Some people hate this. They don't want to tell anyone how they feel on the inside. No matter what, communicating our emotions is a very strong part of building relationships. Think about the people who you do openly share your emotions with. You're probably also closer to those people, right? And even be mindful of the fact that whatever emotion you're feeling at that particular moment, you can actually spread that to other people. So if someone's feeling very joyous, they can spread that around to everybody else around them. Or if someone's having a bad day and they're very angry, they can make them feel angry. I've noticed before in speech class where students will feel very fearful of giving their speech, and as they're talking it through and talking about how fearful they are, they actually make someone else fearful as well. Again, emotional contagion. So in defining emotion, we also need to define, well, what is not emotion? So let's start with feelings. Think of feelings as small emotions. They're quick, tiny bursts of the inner workings of how we react to something. So maybe you wake up and it's a bright, sunshiny day. You're like, yes, wonderful day. The birds are singing. The sun is out. You roll over, you look at your clock, and you realize, I beat my alarm again. and you get a little angry on the inside. Again, that's a feeling, a very quick feeling of happy to not so happy. And probably as soon as you get out of bed, you feel something else. Again, small, quick intervals of an emotion, of a small emotion. Then on the other side of that, we have moods. Now these are low intensity states. And maybe you feel sadness for an extended period of time, and that's what we would probably consider depressed. Again, depending on how you feel, it may affect your mood. Your mood may affect those small feelings that you feel. So if you're very, very sad as part of your mood, then maybe something that usually made you happy, a happy feeling, doesn't make you as happy or happy at all. If you realize that your moods are not so positive, are the ones that you want to have, this may be a good moment to self-reflect. Why am I feeling this way? Is this a reaction to a particular event? Having some perceptual checking may also encourage you to boost your mood. So let's switch back a little bit into emotions. Here in the West, we think of 6 primary emotions. Those 6 are joy, surprise, fear, disgust, sadness, and anger. You probably have some type of idea, even as I just mentioned those, of what those feel like in your own body. Sometimes you can even think about what they feel like when you highly, intensely feel those emotions, such as when you're really, really surprised and you feel amazed, or you're really, really, really angry and you feel rage. There can even be blended emotions. Looking at Robert Plutchik's Wheel of Emotions, we can see some of those interactions, some of those blended emotions here on the outside. Now again, maybe you feel a little bit of sadness and disgust because you didn't stick to your timeline the way you thought you would. You're like, I'm going to accomplish everything on my to-do list, and I didn't. So you feel the blended emotion of remorse. I like referencing this particular drawing because you can see the high intensity, our primary, and even some of the low intensity, as well as those blended emotions. Now, Robert Plutchik definitely has more than 6. He also adds anticipation and trust, but I like the addition of anticipation and trust in this. Furthermore, who says that we only need 6 emotions, right? Other cultures don't necessarily have 6. I know that Chinese culture tends to add sad love and shame as emotions. I think in Hindu tradition, they have 9 primary emotions: sexual passion, amusement, sorrow, anger, fear, disgust, wonder, perseverance, and even serenity. So even be mindful that the emotions that we feel, how we name them, may also have some cultural variations. So as we talk about the nature of emotion, we would be remiss if we didn't look at the forces shaping those emotions, like culture. Now, Jeff said that how we define our own emotions may be based on our cultural variations. But even with the same exact emotion, for example, joy or happiness, we may display those differently based on our culture. I know here in the US, I tend to have friends who smile really, really big smiles. The expression that they show all of their teeth. Whereas my friend who's from China tends to actually cover up her smile with her hand. At first I thought that was a little different, but I realized in getting to know her and getting to know other people from her country that really that was actually just a cultural variation of how they display joy. Now this can cause some tension because you may think, well, this is just the way you show how you're happy you are, or how angry you are, or how sad you are. Whereas in that other culture, they see it as being overly aggressive, maybe rude, or just very strange and odd. That's the way you display that emotion. So be mindful of your emotional expressions, especially when you interact with people from different cultures. and adjust when necessary. It's also important to think about how gender affects our emotions. Now, be mindful, again, that gender is a social construct. Think of gender as a script that someone has handed to you and told you that you must act in this way. These scripts that we design for men and women teach us how society wants us to react to certain situations or certain cultural norms. Traditionally, we think of women as being emotional sharers. They focus in on supporting the relationship. So they may openly encourage you to say, "Go ahead, tell me how you feel. Oh, tell me more." They may even engage in some behaviors that empathize with you, of, "I feel what you feel." Traditionally, though, women don't express what's considered the negative emotions, like anger, because that would be unladylike. Whereas men have more openness to express what we would call the more hostile emotions, like anger, but may not feel as inclined to express sadness through crying. There's even the saying that men don't cry. Now be aware, again, that gender is a social construct. It is a script that we've been given. So when you find a man or a woman who doesn't react the way you think they should, realize they may have a different script. Or maybe they just don't want to have the same rules on their script. And then even think about your own personality. Your extroversion, so how outgoing you are versus how not outgoing you are. Your agreeableness, so how friendly or not friendly you are. Your neuroticism, which is really based on how often you internally reflect, can all have some effect on your emotion. I know for me, I tend to be very agreeable and friendly, which tends to bring a lot more joy into my life. But at times I can be very, very self-reflective, to the point of neuroticism. And because I reflect sometimes too much, it causes me to dwell on the sad things, the angry things, and that can cause me to have long moods of sadness. Therapists have come up with the rational emotive behavior therapy, and this can be very helpful in helping people who are highly neurotic understand some of their misperceptions, such as being remorseful they didn't stick to their time schedule. Saying, "Oh, well, I'm a failure." But having someone there who engages in REBT can help them realize, "Oh, let me not think of it that way. Let me see the practical, logical way of conceptualizing my remorse." So if you do find yourself feeling these negative emotions and you want to manage them, first identify your triggers. Do you get upset when your mother-in-law is over? Do you get slightly irritated when your friend criticizes your cooking? Start recognizing any irrational perceptions that you have about certain experiences. So thinking, "Man, I failed. I didn't stick to my time schedule. I didn't get this done in the right amount of time. So therefore I'm a failure." Consider the cost of those perceptions, whether that be a negative impact on your self-esteem, or even a desire to become more reclusive because you don't want to engage in interacting with other people. And then start challenging those perceptions. Am I really a failure because I didn't stick to my time schedule? Well, other people don't stick to their time schedules, and they're not failures to me. And then start to identify more accurate beliefs, such as, "I didn't stick to my schedule, and that really upset me because I made commitments. But I can still be a successful person and have this one misstep." So as you can see, there's a lot of forces shaping our emotions. Again, in the next section, we're going to talk about some ways to manage those emotions and how we express those emotions.